page that I described. And if you go to, if you go to there, it's down towards the bottom. But also Drew posted it in the...
Well, I know he posted it there, but I want to be able to find it in the future because every time I have this problem and I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
So I think, maybe this is an issue to raise with the data tracker with the tools team, but there is definitely a link on the actual page for the interim session in data tracker.
Oh, okay. See, I went to the list of upcoming meetings, and then I looked at the calendar entry, and then I looked at if you go to EODIR and then look at meetings and look at the link there for the meeting, there's no link there. But now I see the one, so, okay. So I'm going to just, if you don't mind, Drew, I'm just going to paste what I just did over your paste, if that's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead. All I did was put the agenda there, so you can definitely play with it.
Okay.
Well, since this one is under Meet Echo, we actually don't have to worry too much about the participants because we will get the participant list from the Meet Echo.
Right.
Hi, Rich.
Sorry.
Hello.
Oh, hey, Rich.
Hey, Karen.
All right. I think my issue, Greg, it's not an issue, I guess it's a personal problem, is I looked for the thing that looks like the in-person meetings where you have all the buttons. And so one of those buttons is the note page. And that's why I said, there are all these buttons, but none of them are the note page.
Yeah, I'll raise an issue in the data tracker repository.
Exactly, which she says. I've had the same problem. And I've had the notes page not actually automatically log me in via the data tracker too, which again is sort of like, ugh.
Okay.
All right. Anyway.
Awkward.
Where? This could be a pretty...
Hello, hi, Jean. Hi, Cindy.
All right. So, so Drew, if you're traveling, Greg, you do better at notes. Do you want me to?
Yeah, if you MC, I'll note.
I'll MC because I'm terrible at notes, and I'm getting worse the older I get. All right. So. This is a small and friendly crowd. Anyway, this is a EODIR meeting. I did not prepare slides. Our primary point was to discuss the some of the conversations that we had at IETF 123 about GitHub and see where there might be some gaps and what kinds of improvements might possibly be done. This is an official IETF meeting. The note well does apply. You will have agreed to it at some point in time. If you have any questions, talk to Greg. And this is basically meant to be a brainstorming session. And in the prep call that Drew and Greg and I did, we debated amongst ourselves, so we thought that there must be plenty for there to be in here. So I guess I would start with the list of questions that we have and see if we could answer some of these questions. I think there is a part of the community that believes there are issues, usability issues with GitHub, and there's another part of the community that believes it's super clear and we should all completely understand it. I'm overstating that on both sides, obviously. So I do believe that there is some usability issues associated with GitHub, and I don't foresee EODIR developing a huge training program around it, but I do think there are some gaps that we could possibly fill. And I think we have a reasonable set of people here to discuss this. Oh, Alice is here, good. So I would start with the, who are the different audiences, and that not all GitHub users are the same. I think we identified people that use GitHub regularly in their day job, and then those of us who don't. The discussion that Dhruv and I had last time was whether there was a difference between working group chairs and regular draft authors. I think we also have like people that want to contribute, so draft contributors. Do folks have any thoughts on what the audiences are associated with the use of GitHub?
So there's definitely, yeah, folks who use it. Maybe I would divide it sort of into three classes rather than the two you had, or maybe four even. There's definitely folks who use it as part of their day job, writing code and things like that, and they're familiar then with the concept of Git and pull requests and stuff like that. Then there are the people who are using Martin's tooling, which leverages a lot of that, but is not necessarily your typical coder, right? Who is using it. People who are using the tooling to prepare documents is a little different use cases than that. There's in terms of the contributors, there's the drive-by contributors who they're already familiar with GitHub, and so they can make a pull request or suggest changes. There's the people who have never used it, who just want to make either a minor wording change or some clarification or something. And then there's the leadership. So I guess I'm up to 5 categories now. The leadership who probably doesn't use it, but the things they need to do, and I'm thinking ISG and working group chairs, the things they need to do are less about commenting or modifying or suggesting individual documents, but setting up the infrastructure. We have adopted this draft as it was an individual. Now we need to get it into the working group repository or working group organization, if there is one. Or how do we set up a organization for the working group if we have, like Procon, neither of the chairs were familiar with either Martin's tooling or the way the IETF working groups use it. So, I set it up. So I think it's a mix of different kinds of contributors, and different things that people need to do with the sort of common workflow that is not, it overlaps a lot with how familiar you are with the tools, but setting something up and setting up a repository for every single draft, every individual document is different than being familiar with Markdown and Cramdown and the ID template and all of that stuff, I think.
All right, so you had 5.
Yeah, unless I miscounted on my fingers as I was speaking. Yeah, what's missing? Yeah, the last one working group chair or ISG, that's the same thing. Reviewer, and I guess I divided the reviewers into 2 parts. One, the AD, right? They're gonna become the owner of the repository, right? At the end, working if the chairs move or leave or shift around. And so they might have to step in. But yeah, for the reviewers, I was thinking that's, the for lack of a better phrase, and since we're among friends, the IETF old fogies who just want to mail in what would be a diff or suggested changes versus, I mean, part of the reason why we moved or we adopted being able to use GitHub is because it's got that, what was the phrase? That's where the developers are. So we want them to come look at our drafts and say, oh, wait a minute, no, this is a bad byte ordering of the fields in a packet because it will break what everybody is currently doing or something. So there's two classes of reviewers, I think, the IETF folks who aren't using GitHub and the GitHub users who aren't using the IETF. And maybe there's not that much difference between them, but having been involved with some working groups which had a lot of IETF newcomers, they are different.
So, Rich, so I think the main question for us would be that when we are talking about this question, should we think more about what is the role that the person is playing, or what is the expertise that the person has in GitHub usage? Because I think we are somehow mixing the two in this conversation. And maybe because we can actually talk about both of them separately, in the sense that we could say, like you could be, as you said, like coder, user of our tool sets that the IETF has been using, and somebody who has never used GitHub ever in their life.
Right.
And that makes sense with respect to the experience with GitHub. And then we can talk about different roles that person plays within the IETF. That's where the author, reviewer, chair, AD, and the other things came up. Karen, go ahead.
Well, I guess part of what I understand roughly where you're coming from, Jarvis, but I guess my issue is sort of like the issue I just had with Data Tracker. I'm not a complete novice to GitHub, but I don't use it on a daily basis. And I want to know how to do the 3 things that I need to do my job today. And I don't want to spend all of this time figuring it out. And so I don't know. I don't know where that fits on that spectrum.
Correct.
I don't want to do 2 hours of GitHub training to find the.
I think, Karen, you are hitting one point which is very clear, and which is basically like what happens is there are various different ways to use GitHub. Some people use CLI, some people only use web UI, some people don't like Martin Thompson's template, some people like, and in IETF, we have always had this one way that no, let all flowers bloom. We are never going to say that this is the one easy way. We will just list everything. And that has become a problem, especially I feel with GitHub. So I think, especially from EODR hat, I personally feel that we should limit ourselves when we are talking as an easy thing, that we focus on web UI, that somebody who goes to github.com and is only trying to how to use that github.com, the UI that they have provided, and especially for our IETF purposes. So that would help us reduce the problem set. And some of the conversation, if you remember, that was happening in the working group chairs list as well between Warren and other people, that look, some people will just say, oh, there are just 4 commands in Git. You just run those commands and everything is fine. And for some people who use that, it's very easy. And some people who don't use CLI at all, it's kind of like, what? This is a problem. So I personally feel like we should start with saying that we will focus maybe on the GitHub use, on the UI, and on maybe Martin Thompson template use case only. This is an example. I think we are jumping ahead to a bunch of other questions, but just to answer where you were coming from, that's where my head was when we were discussing it before.
For
Right,
what
and-
is,
Go ahead.
sorry, from the RPC perspective, we started with GitHub UI when picking up, okay, what is this version control system? Everybody create a tiny repo with like very small doc and just work within the UI. When you become a more experienced user, you want more tools, you want better tools, and you end up with, configuring VS Code and using GitHub Desktop or using the command line as you become more familiar with it. But I think perhaps starting with the introduction to GitHub with the, here's the UI, here's the concept of a pull request, which is unique to the GitHub user interface. That's not something that you do easily with like CLI. So, and that's, I think, what many, well, and sorry for me to go off on a tangent. Here were the users of GitHub when the RPC was looking for documents for doing GitHub experiments for Auth48. We did notice quite a range of the use of GitHub features. Many people who had repos for their documents weren't using pull requests. They weren't using issues. There's a small, there's like 8 working groups that are using all the features and are very GitHub centric. Many other people are like, well, here, this is how I'm handing my document back and forth. Michael Richardson's comments a couple of chair lunches ago about, please don't use GitHub for Dropbox, or confuse GitHub with Dropbox. Well, people do use it that way. So anyway, my suggestion, yes, focus on just the GitHub UI if we want to help people get started with it.
And sorry, Jean, but GitHub UI, you mean specifically the web client, not the desktop?
The web client, yes. They go to, the GitHub in your web browser and work with it there.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had a question in my head and it went right out of my head, but I think well, we're probably getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back. I think we've talked a fair bit about audience. I guess the relevant GitHub workflows is the same, almost the same thing as audiences. Is there a difference? Oh, wait, Greg. That's actually, oh no, Drew posted it. Are we missing any specific workflows?
Well, there's the overhead around creating the working group organization and then setting up, common issue labels and things like that. That's I wrote some scripts. Yeah.
Rich, as far as creating the organization, that we usually rely it on the secretariat, right? I doubt whether we let chairs create it ourselves. Cindy, can you confirm?
They create it, but we still have to do all of the things to make it more usable, like add just a general description and all of that. And there have been discussions in the working group chairs list, and I can't remember exactly where you're like, thou art a good working group chair because you've done all of these things, or thou art a bad working group chair because you have not done A, B, and C in your GitHub org. So I think some of what Rich is talking about is that second set of things, and not just the secretariat setting up the instance of the.
I understand. I think I agree.
Yeah, Karen said what I was going to say while I was trying to find my mute button. Basically, the secretariat will set up a GitHub instance for people, and then we leave it to you. I'm honestly here because I would love to learn more about GitHub today. So
You might have come to the wrong place.
well, it helps just to hear that I'm not the only person who's a little bit confused by things.
Yeah.
And to interject, Cindy, many people will say quietly that GitHub is confusing. A lot of people don't like to admit it because it is a very popular version control system. But yes, it's as we've also seen on the chairs list, there are a lot of people who are like, this seems to be more complicated than needs to be, and it does have a learning curve.
And there are also those who will defiantly say they're not using it.
But I also, and this is a bit of a cultural thing. It's
Sure.
I think there's
I do wonder though. This is obviously an ongoing issue about people who prefer not to use GitHub. Is there a part of the information that needs to be made available, maybe particularly for the audience of working group chairs, that how to connect the mailing list with the GitHub workflow? Because I've seen that discussion happen a couple of times.
Can you do that?
No, I just mean like not automatedly in an automated way. I just mean like, and I think the RFCs talk about this, like, but just reinforcing if we're going to create other materials that,
Yeah.
Any serious issues need to be resolved on the mailing list, best practice about bringing suggestions or changes to the mailing list, even if they're only first raised on GitHub, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think there are two aspects there. One is the automation part, which is like which way we have the tool, but many people don't use it or haven't enabled it. So we have to just make sure that people enable that GitHub information is coming automatically on the mailing list. But I think the bigger issue is where how do chairs monitor that? And this is where we don't have some chairs are good at it, some chairs are not. Some chairs are not on GitHub, so how would they even monitor it? So that is also a big thing. It's sometimes we do rely on authors to do that job, and some authors do that really good. Like in ModPod, for instance, we see that happen pretty well. Like Elliot has been always sending message back to the mailing list when that's neat, and some people don't. So that part, the education part for best practices for syncing, like when is the right time, what constitute as an important enough information to be shared back to the mailing list, that I think is also key. So there are two aspects there. Sorry if I jumped in. Deb, please go ahead.
So I'm going to ask again, is there a way to automate messages from GitHub to the mailing list?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a,
And you don't want them all, right? You'd only want some subset of them, right?
So both exist actually. So I remember CCAMP working group, for instance, has enabled that everything goes and they are comfortable with it. What Quick did was establish a separate mailing list itself. And what most of the other working groups are doing is on a Monday morning, there is an automated thing that goes that this week, this many PRs came in and this many issues were created, this many things were closed with the links of it. So those are the three things that I am aware of.
I mean, that's just an activity log, right?
Yes.
well,
Yes.
no, it's a summary. What it does is it goes through, since you can, there's a configuration file. Mark Nottingham wrote this tool and it uses another tool underneath that the W3C wrote. But you list the repositories that you care about, and you can say, oh, I don't want things marked editorial. I don't care about that. But it will list a one-line summary of all of the new discussion threads and all of the new pull requests, change requests that have come in. I can mail a sample, or Drew, you can mail it to the folks on this list if you
So, I
want.
mean, I have working groups that do this. I mean, it's
Yep.
just an activity log. I figure it just shows me which repos are being worked on and which ones aren't.
Yes, but it also, some people use it as a reminder also, like, oh, like Stephen is not a big GitHub fan, but he'll use it and he's like, oh yeah, I missed this issue, and he'll go back and check it.
So I've put in the chat that I'd really love a concise set of best practices, and then I can't remember, there was an RFC that Drew, you pointed me to around IETF rules for using GitHub, and I can't remember the name of the RFC, and I can't bring up the window.
I
posted it, 8875.
Okay, there you go, 8875. I think that would be really helpful in the notes.
Yep.
Is there, I'm thinking too, back when Mary was talking about cookbooks, is there a, I mean, I was looking over some of the stuff that's on chairs and on authors. Do we have any specific gaps that we think would be useful to be filled, or how do we? Um, yeah, go ahead.
So, no, nothing. Not good.
Oh. um, Sorry, I just clicked on the wrong thing. Let me get back to where I was. Lost my Meet Echo window.
So,
Back.
so you don't have to do this all at once, right? You can do this little bits at a time. Like if you put this guidance up on, oh, I don't know, whatever wiki we're talking about, working chair wiki for some of it, authors wikis for others of it. You can just do it like Greg's been doing some of the other guidance, right? Little bits at a time. And then you can add to it when you want to add to it. People can make comments and whatever. The trick is going to be to get people to actually look at it, which is always my issue.
So I'm pretty strong proponent of the GitHub stuff for IETF, and I didn't even know that that Cindy and company will create all the overhead for you. So, maybe it needs to be when a working group is formed or something, the note goes out to the chair saying, oh, and by the way, if you want to, if you end up using GitHub, this part will all be automated for you. Will be done for you.
Is there a message that goes out to a chairs when the working groups are formed?
Presumably when you
Not that I'm
assign the
aware of.
chairs, yeah, but when you assign the chairs, you know that you've had some discussion with them.
Well, maybe an AD sends a message to chairs.
Yeah.
But there's no automated onboarding email for new chairs, honestly, because 80% of the time when a new group is formed or a chair changes, it's somebody who's already been a chair.
Yeah.
Actually,
A separate
but-
problem.
I
This
mean,
is
if
not
I'm
sorry, this is not in scope, but I would like to bookmark that idea, by the way, as a welcome as a chair. Even if you've been a chair before, read this info.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say that I thought that was actually a good idea because, processes change and I don't think necessarily we can keep up with all of them quickly. And if you've been a chair for a while, maybe.
And in general, reminders are always good. So
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, I will say that
Mary-
I've sent messages for authors, regardless of whether they're new authors or old authors, that Francesca wrote a bajillion years ago. And I send it to all the authors just because I can, like, why not, right? And a lot of old authors will come back and say, wow, that's a really good list. I'm glad to have that all in one place. So just because they're old chairs doesn't mean they're not interested in the information. And just because they're old chairs doesn't mean like new technology comes up and maybe there's something they need to learn. And same thing is true of ADs, older ADs, possibly. It's the same problem, right?
Yeah, we can change the word old to long serving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but some of us are just old and we haven't been all that long serving. So
I was thinking in particular working group chairs because I do think Mary was talking about an onboarding for chairs. I don't think it ever got very formalized, but I think at the very least, a welcome email that has a bunch of pointers to things that would be helpful for them to know. And I think if we had, to Drove's point earlier, if we have, even though there may be 4 or 5 ways to do things, if we could actually just recommend one way, or if we could say, here's the first way you can get started doing this, and then you can evolve into other ways if you want, but at least give them a place to start. As opposed to, I think the comment made at the Working Group Chairs Forum last time was there was lots of GitHub tutorials on YouTube. That's not adequate and narrowing in scope.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so we've talked about workflows. What help or information is available now? I'd kind of hoped to do a little bit better job of, oh, look at that. Durav already has a list. It's a little bit late for this, but I don't know, Greg, if sometimes there's a few things in the, I guess I could do this, the things that are in the chat that would be useful in the notes.
Yeah, I'm trying to grab them along the way.
Okay.
I also see Ketan in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, apologies for joining late.
Oh, no. I didn't. I'm sorry. The
No
queue had
problem.
gone away. I'll put it back so I can see it.
So about the workflows, there is actually an interest in one of my working groups, the IDR working group. It already has a GitHub and everything, and the chairs are trying to encourage and do that. One of the challenges we found is that for people to move their documents from their private into the working group, this is what this is what is being discussed. One of the challenges was that it would be good to have them converted from XML to Markdown, because Markdown is more easier for people in the working group to review, as well as raise PRs instead of sending those emails with old, new, and all of that. A lot of things could happen, and that seemed, at least that's what I felt, but I was pleasantly happy to discover that many people felt the same, that raising PRs or putting things in Markdown, in XML was difficult for people who are not actually writing those drafts, but reviewers who are reviewing it. So I don't know if this was discussed earlier, but if there was something that could help as they move, could convert from XML to Markdown and then from there on go as Markdown, that will really maybe helpful. Yeah.
So,
So
Ketan, this I will go ahead. Okay, I'll go. I was in the queue first. So,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Ketan, this point I think comes under when we discuss that some people use GitHub as Dropbox, and I would consider if somebody is using XML and still putting things on GitHub, this is very much the case of they are most likely just creating the version on their system and just putting 01, 02, 03, 04, and things like that, which is just using GitHub as a Dropbox. So we definitely want to discourage that. That's why within this group we were thinking that we will focus on using Markdown, using templates like Martin Thompson templates, and using GitHub UI. So from the very start, not as a time when people are moving the document from a private repo to working group repo. In general, we want to always say that yes, Markdown templates is the right thing to do. And in fact, discourage people even at the time when they are, of course, we can't force anyone when it's in private repo and it's somebody else, but we can, of course, nudge people towards the right direction. So instead of thinking of it in terms of, oh, we need a new tool or a new mechanism to convert XML to Markdown, I think I would rather face it as like, oh, if you're still on XML and you want other people to comment and feedback, we need to be on Markdown from the very start.
Right. So it's like that, what we call as brownfield, right? We need, if we can, people are open. I mean, at least in this specific instance, people are open to move to Markdown. So if there is something that helps them as they migrate to move to Markdown, that will really get more people in the working group, and exactly using the GitHub UI is easier for lots more people than the CLI and all of that. I mean, some of us are very comfortable with GitHub CLI and doing things in our sandboxes, but there is a much larger group that would be easier to use the GitHub UI.
Yeah, definitely. It's would not be a very often used tool, but the times when you want it would really help make somebody get to the current state. Having translated many documents from Markdown and NROF into Markdown, from XML and NROF into Markdown, it's not, after the first screenfuls, it gets tedious. Yes.
So is
Maybe
it
we should ask Carsten
hard?
if he's got one.
So is
Gene?
it hard, or it is
sorry.
not a solved problem already? I guess that's what I would.
Sorry, I'm in the queue to talk about the tools. There is not a tool to convert XML to Markdown. What we do is we take a text file and start marking it down. There's Karsten will do this for you if you ask him, but that's not a tool. He says he's got one, but he hasn't made it public. So it is a manual process. To also comment on, yes, Markdown and GitHub go very well together for viewing diffs. Using GitHub with an XML file, the diffs are harder to read. However, for getting people set up, if they're working on a BIS document, then they're starting with XML. So that's for getting people set up to write new drafts. Yes, handing them a Markdown template, they'll probably be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's a good point about the BIS. If you've got an existing thing that is in XML.
So something from personal experience, I had a bunch of drafts and they were all XML. Along came Markdown, and I said, "Oh, this is nice, cool." But I already have them in XML, and I have my editor.
Yeah.
Let me just continue on the next one that comes, and then the next one comes. Oh, why don't I just start again in XML? I can do copy paste, and then it's harder thing to move to Markdown. But if everything from XML could have moved to Markdown, I mean, this is just so much easier with the GitHub workflow. But yeah, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
It does sound like a tool request, Deb, and I'll pass that off to others that do tool requests.
So there is a long-term plan for the tools team to support Markdown, and then providing a conversion tool would also be in that feature request. So right now, Cram Down RFC, which is the flavor used by more than 95% of ID authors, that is Karsten's Markdown. So he took Cram Down, which was created by someone else, and then he added support for internet drafts and RFCs to it. So thus Cram Down RFC right now, that is Karsten's code.
Okay. So back to the question we were on, which is what help or information is available. Oh wait, no, we answered that one. Drew put a list and we discussed
No,
those.
this is when I was thinking, I just made a list, but this is for debate. Like, are these bad ideas, good ideas? Is something missing? Especially
Right, so
yeah, go ahead, Karen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to read the list for people that
Hmm.
hadn't seen it, but it's in the chat. So go ahead, you talk.
Yeah, so I think RFCs, some of this we have already talked. The thing which I kind of find, I was surprised that like, oh yeah, this is not gonna work, but it has actually been very useful, is actually ChatGPT. I have in fact been get error even when you use Martin Thompson's ID. It's not like, and that's also scary because if you don't understand like the whole template business, and it says that, oh, just run this thing and it will work, and then when it gives you an error, it's extremely difficult for a novice person to figure it out. Like, what did I break? And especially if you are working on somebody and he's been working, the author has been doing that good job and they have been doing it fine, and you come and break things up, and you have like, oops, what did I do? And by just putting the logs from this thing, the AI was very useful. Figured out like this is I input the MD file. I give, this is the error that I'm getting. Help me figure out what went wrong. And to my surprise, this was good. And sometimes, like, we all diss at AI that, oh, but in some cases, it's actually not bad. We should use it.
Um, I feel like we've talked around a number of these questions. Sort of one of the underlying questions was, we had the working group chairs discussion of GitHub use for working group chairs, and it was basically how should a working group chair set up their repo for their working group, or their workspace for their working group, and put all the repos into it. And then the question came up, well, do we need additional training, and should we be doing a tutorial? I feel like we haven't done our homework enough to do a tutorial. I think that I think Martin's tutorial for working group chairs, to me, highlighted, it highlighted some of the difficulty in doing a good tutorial that people can understand. But go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I was just going to make a suggestion in terms of, since we're about 19 minutes out from the end of this, a way forward, which would be to, I think we have a pretty good outline of the problem space, and that there's general information out there, including the list that Drew provided. We don't have some specific resources that would be especially helpful for the audiences. And I do like Deb's suggestion of taking a step-by-step approach, like we don't have to solve everything all at once. So my suggestion would be to, given that we have this all this background discussion, to brainstorm a little bit about specific things that we could do next to help fill the gaps. And with the idea that it's not going to be the perfect list, but it'll give us a starting point to get things going. And if we wanted to, we could even ask for votes or other suggestions on the chair's list. But for me, the thing that would be most useful to come out of this would be a suggested, like, first three things resources we're going to create that don't currently exist, that address specific needs by IETF related audiences. That's a long introduction, like, to ask, what are the things that people think we should do next about this issue?
One way to find out would be to take some of the vocal people from the working group chairs lunch and say, what do we, I hate the phrase user journey, but what do we need? Because I'm thinking, for example, Michael Richardson and Joel Halpern, right? Michael was very vocal in don't do this, and Joel was very vocal in, well, how do I have to learn? What's the way I can learn to do these things? I think Martin's tutorial was good in that it showed how easy you could do many things, but it was realistic or bad in that it kept, where do I find that button? So find some people who have notably said, oh, I can't use GitHub, or oh, I'm not going to use GitHub, or what could I do with it? And maybe just chat with them for a few minutes to say, to learn what it is to help steer our direction.
Deb?
So I would just pick one. So you have, I think, three categories of people. You've got working group chairs and how to organize their organization spaces, or whatever the heck you call that. You have authors and you have reviewers. And so if you pick one thing for each community, then you can write it up, get it reviewed, maybe present it, and then move on. And something else will pop up as the next thing to do after that. So you could pick organizing your workspace for working group chairs. You could pick how to use Martin Thompson's tool for creating an internet draft. And then you could pick something review oriented, like How do you make an issue? How do you make a pull? Making a pull request probably is going to be the best, right? Because it's not, I've done it. I don't think it's easy. Like making an issue is way easier, but making a pull request is harder. So I would pick 3 things, one from each category, and then write them up, get them reviewed, and see where you go from there.
Just to follow up on that, sorry, Drew. Just to follow up on that issue, Deb. Just as we discussed before, we constrain that to using Martin Thompson's tools and the web UI.
Yes, absolutely. I would start with that. Anybody that's beyond, that's using the command line interface, by the way, it took me a minute to realize what CLI stood for, is not in this category. If you're using the command line interface, you already know what the hell you're doing.
And one more question that I would ask is, when we say we are documenting, are we thinking let's just putting this in a wiki with screenshots and sort of writing it down? Because I think doing it live, I thought we wanted to do it, it served its purpose, but it's actually may not be as useful than now going to the next journey and doing it this more in a wiki and then sharing those wiki at the right places, at the wiki working group chairs, at EODIR things that, yes, we have started doing this, and asking chairs that, start using these links when you're talking to your authors or when you want to learn something yourself. So just want to make sure that we are all on the same page.
I think you write the wiki. You put the wiki. You put this in the wiki because that's where everything else you have guidance-wise is. Put it in the wiki, write it, get it reviewed, and then you can present the wiki at a working group chairs launch. You don't have to do a demo because demos. Yeah, I would just present the wiki information as a way to get it broadly out to the community you're interested in.
Yeah. So yeah, I at first thought that, Dora, you were talking about developing a new wiki, and I think what we're talking about here is sections of the authors and working group chairs, and not a new wiki.
Agree.
I also think that maybe it's because I don't know what's in that email, but the email that Deb was talking about, Greg, I think you said you were putting that on another list somewhere for people to, another list of things that might be useful to do, but.
So the Francesca email's already out, right? Greg's already scarfed that off and put it up on, I have not looked for it, to be fair, but it's already up on a wiki, but you do the same thing for a new chair's email. And then the trick is going to be how to get it sent automatically when a chair is.
But I just wanted to see the content of it, and I'll have to admit, one of my struggles is we do have a lot of information in a lot of places, and so I'm always looking for the straightforward way. With fewer words and more pictures. So, all right. So, Greg, I added to notes, and you can fix these later because I'm sure I messed it up. So, I have organized in your workspace, which is for working group chairs, and then I have using Martin Thompson's tool and web UI for authoring, and I have making a pull request for reviewing. Those were the 3 suggestions Deb had as immediate pieces of wiki content that we could develop and then present somewhere. I think without a lot more work, doing any sort of live training, I think, to be honest, I think that's either going to need to be somebody who's really committed to doing it, or it needs to be something that's resourced through the LLC. I think that I was deeply appreciative for what Martin Thompson did, but I just did not feel it was that effective, except for,
So
Agreed.
just one point on the live training thing. I think where I've seen that work really well is mainly when it is done as a workshop type of a setting, when people can move around, they can answer each other's question, not via Meet Echo, not like a working group session presentation. It has to be done in a different way, in a different type of a setting. Hackathon table, come here, and let's figure these things out. We are available. Something like that we have to try, which is like more like a workshopy and collaborative thing rather than like what we did the last time. Thanks.
Yeah, I know Jean and Alice were giving me some thoughts in IETF 123 about how they worked for the RSC editor bit.
Yeah, so what we've done when we've done GitHub training is that we, each person has a partner. So each person has a repo, and they have the small document in the repo, and then they work with their partner. They do pull requests on their partner's repo. Their partner does pull requests on theirs. So you work with, you create issues, you make edits, you do pull requests, you can review those pull requests, but they're very basic text files. And the focus is on the mechanics, and you were working with a partner on this. While what we had done was everybody was around a table, but everybody had a partner, and we would say, okay, now everybody, make a pull request, fix these typos in this doc. We were all working. We had like 2 different files, so each of the partner set, there were 2 files, but every team had the same files. And it was, I thought it went really well. And some people started, it really started clicking when actually going through exactly how to do it, rather than seeing it done for you on a screen. Working through it yourself helps a lot.
All right. Well, I think we're at 10:52. I think we have 3 concrete proposals for actions going forward. Do we have people that are willing to work on these?
And what are the 3?
Organizing your workspace for chairs, using Martin Thompson's tool in the web UI for authors, and making a pull request for reviews.
I sent Cindy a note so we can she and I can sync up about, what the Secretariat does to create the organization and the stuff that I've got. So I've got a list of generally what a working group chair needs to do, because I've run through it a couple of times.
I needed that list about a year ago.
Well, all you have to do is have Python and a Unix shell, and it's all set. No, but yeah, we can. I will help with that.
A command.
I've got documentation on Martin Thompson's repo template that is better organized and has more detail than the information he provides for it. And I can make that available, or I can, do pull requests on his repo and update the docs there.
Yeah, he's been pretty good, because I've added corrections and updates to the docs too, and he's pretty good about it.
Okay. All right. So Jean has some Martin Thompson stuff. Rich has some working group chairs stuff. And then the making a pull request, I think, might actually exist in some of what Mary was doing, but I could be wrong. Maybe not.
The Martin stuff has a couple more paragraphs now about how to use just the UI and make changes in it and make a pull request without ever leaving your browser. So maybe someone could take a look at that and see if it's sufficient.
All right. I'm going to need to leave like in 1 minute, unfortunately. So,
So I have a specific.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really good start. We could also ask, put a question out on the EODIR list about folks who might contribute. I'm happy to spin up either a wiki page or a Google Doc to start, or maybe a Markdown document in GitHub, I don't know, to start spinning up the content for each of these cases, and then we can map out a plan on the mailing list to get them to do or whatever.
That sounds good. And with my apologies, I'm going to step out, but Greg and Drew can wrap up if there's anything else. Bye, y'all.
Yeah, if people are happy with the suggestion I just made about the next steps, I'd be happy to take that on. If people have other ideas about things that we ought to do immediately after this, I think it would be good to have, I always like time deadlines for things. I think it would be good to have first cuts at all of this, or these three things, no later than IETF 124, which is actually only like 6 weeks away. So I'm happy to work within that. People are all okay with that. Also happy to take other suggestions. Well, I
The
counted to
124 deadline for my info on the template repo. I'm good with that. I saw, I guess, Greg, you also mentioned maybe a hackathon table for 124. My time is pretty busy. I could drop in on that, but I don't think I could stay there all day. And I'm flying in on Saturday, so would miss most of Saturday.
Yeah, I didn't have I didn't have a specific timing in mind. I just the general idea of a hackathon table. So maybe not something that we do for 124. And I think we'd have to check with the hackathon chairs anyway. So Drew, anything else you want to?
Just one thing about hackathon, I think maybe it might not be, it just hits me that might not be the best venue, because if somebody has at hackathon who has most likely interested in some kind of coding, some experience with GitHub already there, so maybe we have to think a little bit of a venue as well, like go to the people where they are rather than expect them to come to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll brainstorm. I think worth thinking a little bit more about, but yeah.
Could be special edition of Chairs Forum, where instead of a presentation, you get a 1 hour hands-on for setting up your GitHub.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can brainstorm.
Yeah. But this was a good conversation. I think much needed. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.